Kenya is still grappling with a series of political assassinations which have remained semi-mysterious to this day. I say semi because there is very little mystery about it. And we have no guarantee that such extreme measures of exclusion will not be resorted to in the future. This is where the people of Kenya distinguished themselves. It did not take long after independence for some of the more advanced sections of Kenyan society to realize that something was seriously amiss and to say so and to demand change. It would be next to impossible to catalog all the Kenyan patriots who engaged, sometimes at great sacrifice, in this noble cause. Those who dared stand up to a regime that proved no opposition and which was not averse to taking some of the most extreme steps alluded to above to suppress various movements that arose in successive periods. You all know more than I do about the heroic struggles of Kenyan patriots, some since departed, some still around, and some even here tonight, in order to deliver what we did a couple of months ago. A constitution that is the product of the collective efforts of the successive generations of Kenyans for more than 2 decades, a new and voluntary binding covenant among the people and between the people and their governors that does away, at least in principle, with the colonial legacy imposed on the Kenyan people on the eve of independence. It is a culmination of a process that started with the early resistance to imperial rulership in the first independence government, exemplified by such stalwarts as Jaramogi Oginga, Roland Ngala, Bilad Kagia, and others. Energized later by demands of a more equitable economic system by people like J.M. Kariuki and Martin Shikuku, carried forward by younger militants in the persons of combatants like Raila Odinga, Paul Muitera Nyang, Wangari Maathai, James Urengo, and so many others that I cannot name here. All of these graduates of the school of hard knocks and broken bones. It's a glorious tradition of which Kenyans ought to be proud. I know it is still early days and that the forces of reaction have not disarmed completely. We all know that nothing of what has been achieved is irreversible, but it is my sincere belief that this momentous exercise will be carried forward to its logical conclusion because it is undergirded by the resilient and unbending actors in the whole process, the people of Kenya. It is the civil society of Kenya, one of the most vibrant, one of the broadest and most consistent popular movements in our region that has ensured that even leaders are not allowed to waver. From here we draw extraordinary lessons in unwavering commitment, patriotic generosity, and love for country above all else. And we learn humility by recognizing that all the bravery and the eloquence of the illustrious names I've cited and others would have come to naught without the bedrock of resistance that was provided by the broad masses of Kenya and their civil society movements in their great and complementary diversity. Is the region noticing? Throughout East Africa, the signing of the new constitution of Kenya has been received with great enthusiasm and new aspirations, except in certain ruling circles whose narrow vested interests run counter to the very essence of what has been delivered in Kenya. In Uganda and Tanzania, voices have been raised from time to time to demand a new constitutional dispensation. But these have been rather sporadic disjointed, and mainly party political voices in an environment where political parties have become rickety vehicles for periodic elections. These, therefore, have become very easy to thwart, either through violence or through bribery, such that they have a tendency to hibernate for long periods of time and to emerge only sporadically when a punctual event provides the stimulus. But from what I'm hearing now, in informal discussions and from the media, I believe that the breathtaking developments in Kenya have served as an inspiration for and will help spur more vigorous engagement of various actors in the other countries. Not only Uganda and Tanzania, but also hopefully later in the new EAC members, that is to say, Burundi and Rwanda. For the time being, allow me to leave Burundi and Rwanda to one side, for they come from a different experience, even if it is true the fundamentals are the same. Within useful time, I am sure they will find their rhythm within the East African community, even as other members learn a few things from the unique aspects of the experiences of the new members. But just like Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, and here I will tread rather softly on Tanganyika and Zanzibar, because that's a different process. Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania were all, or are still, or to some extent, colonial projects. They came to be what they are today totally by accident. And definitely not because of anything that their peoples or leaders agreed upon. There was no treaty signed between Kikuyu chiefs and their Akamba, Baluya, Luo, or Turkana counterparts to found a nation called Kenya. There was no agreement, written or not, between the rulers of Buganda, Bunyoro, Ankole, or Busoga to form an entity called Uganda. Nor was there such a development between the Sukuma, Nyakyusa, and the Angoni chiefdoms to come together and call their country Tanganyika, let alone get to the Sultan of Zanzibar and convince him to join the party. Between the Catholics and Protestants fighting each other in Uganda and dividing up the Baganda between Ingereza and Faransa in the process. And William McKinnon, busy laying the first rails in Mombasa for his lunatic express. Carl Peters killing, burning, and bribing native chiefs in Usagara and Ngomero in Tanganyika. And the reluctant and not so reluctant imperialists in London and Berlin. There could have been absolutely no suggestion that they were all somehow involved in a process that would one day create these countries today that we call Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. The concerns of British imperialism over the necessity to defend its invaluable possession called India by securing the Suez Canal, and the desire of a section of Germany not to be left out of the scramble of as King Leopold of Belgium was carving out for himself a sizable personal estate, were more in evidence at the formation of what we call our countries than any desire on the part of our forebears, our great-great-parents, to come together and do a nation. They never thought of that. It's always possible, as sometimes amusing, to think of what could have been had these imperial interests not intervened the way they did, when and where they did. Perhaps our nations, as we know them, as we knew them then, the Gikuyu, the Akamba, the Nyakyusa, the Sukuma, the Banyankore, the Baganda, etc., would have expanded, amalgamated, and developed into more powerful states through military diplomacy and matrimonial conquest. There's no contradiction there. Building empires too powerful to be intimidated by a couple of adventurous white men carrying a rifle, a bottle of gin, and a copy of the Bible. We may never know. But what we know for sure is that the advent of colonialism put paid to any natural growth our states could have taken and the directions in which they would have grown. The Luo would not form part of Sudan, as could have happened in other circumstances, nor the Nyakyusa of South Tanganyika, part of Malawi, nor the Bahangaza of West Tanganyika, part of Burundi, nor the Bahaya of Northwest Tanganyika, part of Uganda. All this was stopped. Here, our disparate peoples were, at the behest of an implacable colonial logic, shoehorned into entities that made no sense to their component parts, but were welded together only by superior force and economic organization for the benefit of the colonial master. This is how we found ourselves at independence, and this is how, by and large, we still are today, give or take a few modifications. It's my contention that at independence, even after the Lancaster processes, we should have used the little space provided by independence to seriously examine the state of our nationhood and interrogate the governance systems we had inherited from colonialism, and decide how we are going to govern ourselves henceforth. To begin with, if the foregoing has any truth in it at all, we were far from being nation states. We were a collection of disparate nations where such a concept existed, brought together to serve a foreign purpose. The departing foreigners still wanted us to continue that same old purpose, serving that old same purpose, but in new guises. What was our response? Did we want to continue living together in this ensemble that none of us had fashioned? While recognizing that there were a disadvantage brought about by the colonial nature of our being together, could we still discern certain advantages in staying together in these ready-made, larger groupings, delivering scale, population, and economic might? And so on and so forth. There are so many questions one could have asked. In answering these questions and many more arising out of the answers to them, we would have given ourselves space to work out new and amenable forms, institutions, and processes of governance, crafted a new dispensation in keeping with who we are, where we come from, and where we aspire to go, and how. Those in power were well served by the governance systems left behind by the colonialists, and they therefore did not want to change them, and those who dared to challenge them, as we have already seen, were dealt with in cavalier fashion. The space thus created for the new black colonialists was used to steal, rob, and plunder national resources as our rulers became more and more rapacious with their elephantine appetites, while the great majority of our people languished in abject poverty. Absolute power. Such terms as imperial presidency, which denotes a dispensation in which vast and unchecked powers are vested in one individual, became current at the same time as other concepts also became current. Terms like kleptocracy, meaning the rule of government by compulsive thieves,